Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today we're going to be talking about my very tentative TBR for the fall. Also, it feels really weird to be talking about my fall TBR when it is like getting close to 90 out and I'm wearing a tank top, so here we are. As far as my TBR for the summer went, I read things. Like, I definitely read things, but I read way less than I thought I was going to, and I read barely anything off of my actual TBR, it feels like. It's, yeah. We might be rethinking the TBRs again come next year. I don't know. We'll see. Start off with my books. I do have a couple of books that I'm still in the middle of or kind of rolling over. To start off with, I have a couple that future me will either edit this out or say something if I've managed to actually finish reading them by the end of August and they're off of my fall TBR. But I started doing a reread of The Shining by Stephen King. I started doing my annual reread of it rather early. I started it this month in August. So normally I don't read this until like October. Or not, I am on chapter 18, the scrapbook, page 222. So still moving along, but this book reads quick anyway, so yeah, like I said, I don't know, I might be done with this already by the time this video goes up, but we'll see. This is about the Torrance family who move into the Grand Overlook Hotel in Colorado to be winter caretakers of the hotel because it gets the road gets blocked off and snowed in and you just can't get people up and down it. So they are there to take care of the place, make sure like pipes don't burst, it doesn't incur any like storm damage or anything like that until the season is open again. And unfortunately, they are all of them bringing their own little demons into this very haunted hotel and shit gets crazy. Is another one that, again, I don't know if I'll finish it by the end of August or not. Again, editing me can deal with this. But it is a book that I actually started while on vacation, because this was one of the books that I brought with me on the trip, and I am partway through it. It is Come Tell Me How You Live by Agatha Christie, and you'll see it says Malouin on it. This is because this is not a mystery novel. This is Agatha Christie writing a memoir about a time period that she spent with her archaeologist second husband, Max Malouin, on digs in Syria. And yeah, so this is actually a reread for me. I read this years and years ago. I am currently on page 112, which is in chapter 5, Fin de Saison. I will have some thoughts. You'll hear those in either my August wrap-up if I'm successful in finishing this book, because I am like halfway done with it, or in my September wrap-up, I imagine. So, and otherwise, anything else that's rolling over into this month, Terran Wanderer. I am still reading Terran Wanderer, which is book 4 in the Chronicles of Prydain series by Lloyd Alexander, so I'm still doing that read through. I imagine that this fall I will be able to finish my reread of Terran Wanderer and also then book 5, The High King. And then otherwise, another series that is also rolling over into the fall is the Eagle and Jaguar trilogy by Isabel Allende. I read City of Beasts this month, and I am currently partway through Kingdom of the Golden Dragon, which is book 2, and I have Forest of the Pygmies sitting on my nightstand right now. That's the final book, and yeah, those will be rolling over. I imagine that I will finish both of them this fall. They are what I'm bringing as my lunchtime reads for work, so I probably will be picking at them the whole fall. I have decided that I would like to get back into a fantasy novel that I started reading months ago and then put it aside because I had so many other books that I wanted to get to first, and I knew that this one was going to consume me. It's about time that I get back to it. And it is The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. A fantasy novel involving like dark magic and absolute power and basically dealing with the destinies of these two royal brothers. Sounds really interesting. This pulled me in immediately when I started reading it, but again, I didn't want it to all consume me because I had so many other things going on. But hoping to get back into this. Then I have decided that maybe I should, just in the interest of right now, try to slide back into my old requirements from the previous couple of years where I was trying to read a classic and a nonfiction every month when I was doing like monthly TBRs, not seasonal TBRs. So I figured I would try to do that with these two books over the course of the fall. So the classic I have selected is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and this is about a boy named Pip. I'm pretty sure his name is Pip. Yeah, Pip. He is an orphan. His parents have passed when he was very little. He has been kind of raised by his overbearing asshole sister and her very sweet husband. A lot of like things are going on. Basically, he's had like some interactions with a criminal, and at one point he also ends up being selected to be a playmate for a ward of this very mysterious rich old lady named Mrs. Havisham. And things kind of, you know, it's Dickens, so things are all kind of interwoven stuff going on. I really wanted to read a Dickens this fall, and I've got Our Mutual Friend on my shelves, which I could also pick up, but I'm leaning more towards wanting to read Great Expectations, and this was on my summer TBR, so I guess this is also rolling over. And then for nonfiction, the book that I have selected, I wanted to read some true crime kind of thing this fall as well. However, considering some other books that I have on this list, which are going to be creepy and or potentially upsetting depending on what's in them, I decided, you know what, I don't want to go read one of my true crime that's about like a bunch of people dying. So I decided to go with just straight up thievery and dive back into The Feather Thief, which is Beauty, Obsession, and the Natural History Heist of the Century by Kirk Wallace Johnson. As you can see, I started this a few months ago and did not get very far into it, but I like to dive back into it. This is about a heist at the British Museum of Natural History in 2009. This young man broke in and stole a whole bunch of rare bird skins to make money off it, basically. There's more going on to the story as well, but it's absolutely batshit bonkers, and what attracted me to this story, besides the fact that it's absolutely batshit bonkers, and this guy is not the smartest thief, but he managed to get things done anyway and get away with it for quite a while, it's also the fact that the criminal himself is my age. And that was like, well, that's interesting. So, yeah, anyway. For my spooky books, I have, of course, Stephen King. So the first of which is The Dead Zone, which is a book about a guy who, when he was a kid, he had this nasty, like, brain injury, and from time to time he would end up having like these like precog like hunches or like things like that. And that's just his life. Sometimes he has these hunches. But as an adult, he ends up going through a traumatic car accident, which resulted in him being in a long-term coma. And when he wakes up, his abilities are now like crazy strong. And in the space of him now having all of these like precog abilities, he is also able to tell a potential future that might happen if this terrible amoral man gets his way. So now, like, the main guy, his name is Johnny, he is going to have to figure out what to do to like stop this potential future from happening. Then I've also got Night Shift, which is a collection of short stories by Stephen King. I have read one other collection of his shorts before, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm pretty excited to get into another one of his collections. I do know that You Like It Darker came out not that long ago, and I'm really, really excited to read it, but I have not gotten a copy, and I'm gonna try to be good and wait until like my birthday or Christmas and just ask for it. I don't know. I just really want to read that too. And then I've also got a nonfiction by Stephen King, which is Danse Macabre, and this is a collection of like essays and things that he wrote on like horror as a genre and like various parts of like varying tales of horror and the history of like horror, stuff like that, so pretty cool. I did also originally want to read Holly this fall, but to read Holly, even though I don't necessarily have to, but I would like to do a reread of the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to squeeze it in this fall. So that's why it's not on like my official list of books that I want to read this fall. But if I have what happened, has happened this year, of me being like, you know what, all of these books I picked out, I'm only going to read a couple of them and then I'm going to read a bunch of other things, that might be something that I gravitate towards, is a reread of that trilogy and then Holly, potentially, but it's not on the official TBR list, so we'll see. Spooky books. I want to do a reread of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I know, I just reread it this past year. Like, I kind of really want to read it again a lot and potentially annotate it. I'm not sure. Anyway. Then there's Lone Women, and this is by Victor Lavelle, and this is following our main character. Her name is Adelaide, and she is traveling across the West. She is fleeing California and going to Montana as a homesteader. She has this gigantic steamer trunk that she is traveling with. It's 1915. It's really dangerous to be a lone woman trying to homestead. But there are some very deep, dark secrets that Adelaide has locked away in the steamer trunk that she takes with her everywhere. I have heard this described as deeply spooky, and I'm pretty interested in deeply spooky. I'm also pretty interested in expanding my horror horizons a little bit beyond Shirley Jackson and Stephen King. This one, yeah, anything I've heard about it has been wicked good, really creepy, very interesting, and I'm very intrigued. So then I'd also like to pick up Meddling Kids, and this is by Edgar Cantero, and this is basically like Scooby-Doo-ish, but grown-ups. This follows 4 teens and their dog. In 1977, they solved this like case. Already reeling from that when one of them, her name is Andy, she tracks down the guy that they caught all those years ago and confirms that he was in fact the wrong person. So now she's going to try to get the gang back together and try to figure out what actually happened back in 1977. From the back of this, and also just other people reviewing this, I've heard it's like Scooby-Doo meets H.P. Lovecraft. Then we have two others that are kind of spooky. I'm saying kind of because they have potential to be a little bit spooky, but I don't think they're technically under like the spooky side of things technically. The first is Sidewinder, which is a novella by Marcella Haddad, and this is actually more of like a sci-fi western. And this is following a character named Seja, who is like a watcher, and her and her small town are kind of grappling with these new mysterious strangers that have arrived, basically telling them that terrible creatures are like on their way. And then this one is called Bite Me. It is by Christopher Moore. It is a love story. I don't know how to explain this book without actually reading this synopsis to you, so I'm just gonna read it because I really don't know what to expect. I've heard Christopher Moore is kind of like a satirist, similar to like Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett, but a lot different. I have another one of his titles on my shelves that I also haven't read yet. Yeah, I don't know how to explain this other than to read it to you, so I'm gonna read it to you because this sounds batshit bonkers. And I think I randomly got this at like a secondhand store because I was like, oh, interesting. It says, while some lovers were born to run, Jodie and Tommy were born to bite. Well, reborn, that is, now that they're vampires. Good thing theirs is an undying love, since their goth girl Friday Abby Normal imprisoned them in a bronze statue. Abby wants to be a blood-sucking fiend too, but right now she's really busy with other stuff like breaking in a pair of red vinyl thigh-high Skankenstein platform boots and wrangling her PhD candidate boyfriend Steve, the love monkey. And then there's that vampire cat Chet, who's getting bigger and smarter and thirstier by the minute. Abby thought she and Steve could handle the kitty cat on their own. Before you can say OMG WTF, Tommy and Jodie are sprung from captivity and join forces with Abby, Steve, the frozen turkey bowling Safeway crew, the Emperor of San Francisco, and his trusty dogs Lazarus and Bummer, Abby's gay goth friend Jared, and San Francisco's finest Cavuto and Rivera to hunt Big Cat and save the city. And that's when the fun really begins. I don't know what the fuck is going on with this. Which is a sign that either A, this is going to be a laugh a minute like a lot of the very funny paranormal romances I used to read in like high school and college, or it's not going to make any goddamn sense. I'm going to hate it entirely. So we'll see. Then I've got some thriller things, mystery thrillers for the fall. I've got Blood Sisters by Vanessa Lilly. This is following Sid, who is an archaeologist for the Federal Bureau? The Bureau of Indian Affairs. Yeah, so she's in Rhode Island. She works there as an archaeologist, but some shit is happening back home. Basically, she fled from Oklahoma like 15 years ago because of some crazy traumatic shit that happened, but now she's being called home because a skull has recently been found around the same time that her sister has just vanished. So basically, Sid has to go home and figure out what is actually going on, as well as finally trying to deal with the shit that happened 15 years ago. And there is also a string of Indigenous women that have gone missing. So, lots of stuff happening in this book. This is probably like my primo, like my top read that I have to get through this fall. And it's Sadie by Courtney Summers. Finally, this is the time where I'm gonna do it. Gonna read this puppy. This is a book that is partially told through narrative of Sadie and also partly through transcripts of a podcast. So it's a true crime podcast, and the host of it is looking for Sadie. Sadie is a young woman who, her and her sister went through some really bad stuff, but she ended up kind of taking care of her younger teen sister and kind of trying to help like raise her and stuff. And unfortunately, this like serial killer kills her younger sister, and Sadie also disappears. And the podcast host he's basically looking for her. He's been looking into the case, and he is also looking for her and trying to figure out, did she go looking for her sister's killer and become his victim, or did she make him disappear? So it's like going through everything. It's dealing obviously with a lot of tough stuff, which is why I have kind of put it off, but at the same time this sounds right up my alley because it's dealing with like tight family like bonds and also potentially revenge. There's true crime, there's a podcast, there's a lot of stuff going on. So it sounds right up my alley, but there is a lot of tough stuff obviously, so I'm also kind of like a little bit hesitant about it at the same time. But I'm really desperately wanting to pick this up this fall. Then I've got fall specific reads. So first up is the Anne of Green Gables manga classic. So Anne of Green Gables is by Ella Montgomery, and it's about, and if you don't know, about an orphan girl named Anne Shirley, who is adopted by brother and sister Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert and brought to Prince Edward Island. She was not actually what they initially were looking for. They were actually looking to adopt a boy to help them around the farm now that they were getting older. But through a mistake, Anne is there instead, and they end up deciding to keep her, even though Marilla's like, yo, I don't know anything about raising a girl. And she is just imaginative and so full of love that she desperately wants to give, and she's just, it's such a sweet story of her connecting with nature and her home and the people around her, and it's got like that found family element that I love so very, very much. And I love the book. I've read it like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 times, I think now. I've also read the series a couple of times. First book is still the best. But this is the manga version of that. It's very cute looking. I'm pretty excited to read this. This adaptation, the story adaptation is by Crystal S. Chan, who actually did the story adaptation for, I believe, my Pride and Prejudice manga. And the art is by Kuma-chan. Then I'm also thinking of doing a review read of The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I read this in high school. I really liked it back then. I have not read it since. I have this copy. I've been wanting to reread it, and Nathaniel Hawthorne just kind of screams fall in New England to me, even though I think his stories, a lot of them take place over the course of seasons. It just always feels like fall to me. Probably because I'm getting like Salem and Hocus Pocus and shit mixed up in my head with like his works. But The Scarlet Letter is about a woman named Hester Prynne, and she is in this small town and has arrived sans husband and with a little girl named Pearl, and she is basically forced to wear this scarlet letter on her chest because it's Puritan times and the Puritans suck, and they've basically labeled her as an adulteress or a whatever, so she has to wear the scarlet letter on her chest, and it's basically her dealing with this, dealing with the puritanical town, Pearl growing up and everything, and the mystery of, well, wait, so where is Pearl's dad? Who is Pearl's dad? Lots of stuff. I know that probably doesn't sound very good at all, but I just remember when I was in high school, I think I was like either the only one or one of the very few people in class who actually really enjoyed this book. I don't know how I feel about it now. I have a lot of thoughts about the Puritans. I could give a TED talk about my loathing for the Puritans and the way that their society has somehow, the way that their crap has somehow still affected our society up until today, which is absolutely bonkers. But we're not going to get into that because if I finish reading this, you'll hear all about it then. Anyway, have not read this in years. I'm a little nervous to see what I think about it now as an adult divorced from who I was when I was like 16, 17, but we'll see. Then I would also like to pick up The Trackers. This is by Charles Fraser. I don't know what it says about this book, but it just screams fall to me. So even though I don't think it's technically set in the fall, it just feels like the fall. This is about a painter named Val Welsh. He is traveling westward to Wyoming, and he lands a New Deal assignment to create a mural representing the region for a post office. And there's a wealthy art collector and his wife that are hosting the artist at their ranch. There's a lot of rumors and stuff going on. The wife ends up fleeing the house with a valuable painting, and so the art collector recruits Val to hit the road to track her down. So this is basically getting a look at America, or at least Western America, during the Great Depression, which it's honestly, I think it's been a while since I read a book set during the Great Depression. I used to read a lot of books set in and about the Great Depression when I was growing up, because like the Great Depression and like the home front during World War II were like special interests of mine when I was a kid. I don't know, I was a weird kid. So kind of interested to see what this whole thing is about. And I've never read this author before. He apparently is the one who wrote Cold Mountain, which, I mean, was made into a movie. I believe that's the same book I'm thinking about, and people love the shit out of it, so I don't know, I'm hopeful. I've heard some good things, so. And then the next fall book, which actually I might save for the end of fall, is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Yes, we have like 4 Stephen King books. 4? No, 5. This is 5 on my list, okay? So this is about a time traveler trying to stop the Kennedy assassination in 1963. You can see the cover has the newspaper, and the inside cover says that it was thwarted, so interesting. I think to explain it entirely, here's what it is. Jake Epping, a high school English teacher in a Maine town, is grading essays by his GED students. He reads a gruesome, enthralling piece penned by janitor Harry Dunning. 50 years ago, Harry somehow survived his father's sledgehammer slaughter of his entire family. Jake is blown away, but an even more bizarre secret comes to light when Jake's friend Al, owner of the local diner, enlists Jake to take over the mission that has become his obsession, to prevent the Kennedy assassination. How? By stepping through a portal in the diner's storeroom and into the era of Ike and Elvis, big American cars, sock hops, and cigarette smoke. Finding himself in a warm-hearted Jody, Texas, Jake begins a new life, but all turns in the road lead to a troubled loner named Lee Harvey Oswald. The course of history is about to rewritten and become heart-stoppingly suspenseful. So, this is not his usual. This is not, from what I know, a horror story. This is a mystery. This is a time-traveling story. I love time travel in a story. And it's also, like a mystery suspense. I've heard there's like a love story or something in here as well. I have not watched anything about this. I have avoided hearing too much about this because I don't want to be spoiled at all. I am also fascinated because I know this event in history is one that people like have like gigantic conspiracy theories about all over the place. I don't want to get into them because I don't know. I'm just very interested to see this kind of look at things and like time traveling to prevent, and I'm hoping maybe it also deals with the repercussions of what preventing such a seismic event would be. Because it's not just like something as simple as, oh, I saved so-and-so, just a random stranger, for being hit by a car when I travel back to like 1970 whatever or something. It's not as simple as that, even though that can have like severe repercussions, because I mean, they could be good repercussions, like maybe that person could invent the cure for cancer. Or it could be really bad, because maybe this person would grow up in 5 years to be the worst serial killer the Eastern Seaboard has ever seen. Like, you don't know. And I find stuff like that really fascinating. But those are little ripples. This is like an entire, like a huge event. If you've ever watched Doctor Who, you know that the Doctor tries not to mess with like set points in time. Like, for example, when he takes his companion Donna back in time and they end up in Pompeii, and it's like, well, we can't warn people, we can't prevent this from happening. We just can't, because it's a set point in time. Pompeii has to burn. And like stuff, it's like a, you know, set points in time, important moments in history, and this is an important moment in history. So I don't know, I'm fascinated. I'm very fascinated. I'm very interested to dig into that. But because it's November 22nd, 1963, I think I'm going to save this puppy for November, which means I'm going to try to squeeze as many of these other books into September and October to leave myself some time to get through this, because Stephen King is usually a quick read through. He reads quick, but this is a chunky bastard, so we'll see. Come down to the last couple of books that I really want to possibly squeeze in this month, and a couple of them are because they also feel like fall to me, but then there's other purposes to them. So I would really like to do some rereads of some books, and a couple of the books I want to reread are some How to Frank Mosher. So I really want to do a reread of Northern Borders, which is a story, coming of age, I guess, about a boy named Tut who ends up going to live with his grandparents up in very rural Vermont, like up near the Canadian border. And it's basically his life from the ages of 6 to about 18 with them, growing up in a Vermont that is very much changing. You know, farming is starting on its like decline, and you're dealing with the coming of like the highway and steady electricity and telephones and stuff like that. So life in rural Vermont is very much changing, and he's kind of there witnessing it, and it's also about his life growing up with his grandparents. I love this book so much. I started annotating it and I did not get too far into my rereads, so I'm planning on continuing with that, and then also getting into A Stranger in the Kingdom, which is another one of my favorite books of his, and this one is a little bit different. They're set in the same kind of county, Kingdom County, but this is in like a different area of Kingdom County. This is more town Kingdom County than like super rural out in the sticks. This one is following a boy named Jim, and this is also actually a coming of age story, because this is about Jim in his town witnessing the seedy underbelly of his town, basically, when a black pastor and his son move into the area to be the new pastor for the local church, and the racism that kind of seeps its way out of the woodwork there, which only gets worse when a young woman is murdered and everyone basically accuses the pastor of having done it because he is an outsider and he is a black man. So a lot of like this seedy underbelly of Vermont is what you're looking at in such an idyllic location, seeing like the dark badness that is like underneath all of that, and the racism and bigotry and stuff that is kind of like in smaller towns to outsiders, or especially someone who is not like the rest of us, kind of deal. And there's like courtroom drama involved, and there's like a lot of stuff. There's like kind of mystery elements to it, just very little bit, but most of it is surrounding like the town, the repercussions of everything, and also like the courtroom drama surrounding this entire thing. And so I would also really like to do my reread of this and also annotate this. And then I would also like to do a reread of The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan and annotate this as well. These three will be for a video. If you don't know what The Joy Luck Club is about, this is following 4 Chinese American women and their relationships with their mothers who immigrated directly from China, and this is told in part from the point of view of the daughters and also from the point of view of some of the mothers, and this is them trying to relate back to each other and share bits of themselves and their culture and their history and everything with each other, and all of this is taking place in the aftermath of the death of one of the women's mothers. So yeah, this is like everything and more of what I want to read this fall. Out of control TBR if you really think about it, but I don't think about it because I could probably squeeze all of these in if I could just keep myself on track. Let me know if you guys have read any of these before. No spoilers, please. If there's any that you're excited to hear my thoughts about eventually when I get around to wrap-ups. I'll still be doing like my usual monthly wrap-ups and stuff like that, because otherwise you'd have like a 3-hour video and I wouldn't want to do that to you guys. This is everything that I'm hopefully going to read this fall. Let me know also, are any of these on your fall TBRs? What are you planning on reading this fall? It feels weird to be talking about fall and spooky season and stuff like that, when again it is pretty hot in this house right now. But yeah, I'm trying to get into that autumnal mood. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you are new here and you would like to subscribe, please consider doing so, and I will see you all in the next video.